Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not my beat.
Of course, Michael is the host of MP on the Mic, 10 a.m. to noon on our sister station, 910 The Fan down in Richmond, which you can listen to. Where, Michael? On which app?
Free Odyssey app, Craig.
Yep, that's the one. At least the rumors, they are true. Let's start with the guy who has just been named the Commander's starter. What do you make of the timing of the decision? I mean, to ask you what you make of the decision feels ridiculously stupid. It's so obviously the correct one. But what do you make of kind of the process they used to get to what feels like an inevitable outcome, but is one that's just based off what we've seen over the last bunch of months?
Yeah, we've seen so many different ways that they've handled this, right? You had the, hey, we're making him compete for it era when everybody knew who the starter was going to be. Then we're just naming the guy, even though there probably should have been a competition. Lots of we've seen it done all the different ways. I guess at the end of the day, I don't care. He's been my QB1 since he was drafted. I think everybody understands the score that, Dan Quinn wanted him to have some sort of normal process. If he thinks that's what happened, good for him. He didn't, in my mind. He just didn't say a thing that was true for several weeks, which I don't get worked up about. They got the correct answer and they didn't cost him any developmental time between here and there. So no harm was done here. But to suggest that somehow a full fair process unfolded here, no, we had an outcome and it just got announced today instead of a different day.
So I'm going to push back on you, Michael, because otherwise it would feel incredibly disingenuous for those that listen to the first hour of the show, because I actually disagree with what you just said there, although you actually raised a really interesting counterpoint that I hadn't fully considered, which is there actually was a fair competition, in my opinion. Why it looks unfair is Jayden Daniels is significantly better than Marcus Mariota, but they actually split 1 reps, and Marcus had the first shot at this job back in the spring. He had the 1 reps early. Had he played really well and had this been closer, then perhaps, or Jayden had played poorly, then perhaps there's a different outcome. It's just that Jayden was way better. So yes, this has been inevitable for a couple of weeks, but it's inevitable because of how the two men played. With that said, I hadn't really considered the idea of, okay, well, what if you name him the starter 2 weeks ago? Did you cost yourself development time? Jayden's mostly been with the one, so I guess it doesn't really matter. But what do you make of that retort that there actually was a competition? It just was a blowout if we're going to make it a scoreboard level game.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been over since minicamp, right? All the effusive praise coming out about Jayden, it was pretty clear at that point which way they were going. I agree with you that Marcus could have forced this door open through some really great play or, something dazzling along the way. It's the NFL, right? Until you say something, it's not a done deal. So if he had been lights out, even in one of these preseason games, maybe they go back to the drawing board and say, we assumed we were going to name Jayden, but do we need to discuss this further? I think that's an astute point that in the NFL, anybody can create a competition at any time. That option was always available. He did not avail himself of it because, as you mentioned, he's not as good as number 5. Number 5 is the best quarterback on the roster. I mean, if you want to really quibble about developmental time, I'll point out there's been a lot of snaps available. He hasn't been given. I don't think it's a huge deal. I do get the sense he's doing all the right things, getting all the right classroom work, doing all the right reps. I think he's as prepared as a rookie can be for what happens next. And I think, hey, I've been critical of Cliff Kingsbury, so I want to give a hat tip to Cliff Kingsbury, who has put him in a lot of different situations in these 2 preseason weeks, way more, I would say, than the average quarterback, or at least the average preseason game I've watched in my time in Ashburn. I think he's done a very nice job getting him ready.
Michael Phillips, MP on the Mic, 910 The Fan, down in Richmond with us here on the Hoffman Show. I agree with that. The competition, the scoreboard said it's over since minicamp, but there was still time on the clock, and thus you never know with such things. Let's expand on the Cliff point, because I've also been very, very impressed with Cliff. Seeing what they've done with him, I'll let you take first crack at this. I don't know that we'll get to this topic on the show, frankly, until Wednesday, but what do you want to see from Jayden moving forward? And that could include nothing until he starts week 1 against Tampa.
I don't know that he needs to come out Sunday night for the preseason game. If they want him to do a series or two, I have no problems with that. Certainly still offensive line things to clean up, and those are best cleaned up with the starting quarterback, with the guy whose cadence you're going to hear, with the guy you're going to be with in the huddle, with the guy who's calling the protection. So I have no problems if they want to play him 1 or 2 series on Sunday night. I don't need to see it from Jayden's perspective, but I think there are compelling reasons, right, to do it, for cleaning up the offensive line, for giving him snaps at FedEx Field, whatever that's worth. I don't know that that's worth an immense amount, but he's never played a game at FedEx Field, and this will be his only opportunity.
And by the way, Michael, he never will because it's Commanders Field now.
Thank you. How about that?
I mean,
Yeah, that's...
He could take the first ever snaps at Commanders Field. That alone seems like a terrible reason to expose your starting quarterback to a potential injury.
A ceremonial first snap there.
Yeah.
Now I got 2 old names I got to worry about accidentally saying. Unbelievable. They just continue stacking up. I think that, from Cliff's perspective, right, I think he wanted to see all the formations, all the things. I think at one point, it was really hard to tell from the TV copy, I think at one point they ran a no huddle out of an incomplete pass, right? That tells me Cliff had a laundry list of things he wanted to get done, and he was going to get those things done.
Yeah, for sure. And also, Michael, if you ever are just like, I can't remember what, just think, what would Doug Williams say?
We are the Commanders.
That is correct. And I had the soundbite ready to go, and now I get hotkey error, internal error while processing the operation. Try again. Come on.
We are the Commanders.
There we go. And don't forget, you have to laugh after.
The downgrade there. The downgrade there from the actual clip to me doing an impression of the clip. That I'm glad we got the redemption.
Yeah. And yes, I do really have the Craig Melvin on my soundboard. Michael Phillips, MP on the mic. He does a great show. He doesn't have that feature, but he's with us here on the Hoffman Show. All right, let's stick with the offense. I know you wanted to talk about the receivers. I made the bold declaration earlier, Michael, that I don't think there's going to be a wide receiver 2 on this team. That you're just going to see a rotation of a bunch of different dudes who have differing skill sets, and they're going to try to put them in spots where they can succeed. That's kind of my impression of the last couple of weeks of how this thing has played out. Where are you at with the wide receiver room, specifically beyond Terry McLaurin?
Yeah, I was intrigued by Jahan playing almost exclusively in the slot, right? So you got, Terry on his side. You've got, what would the position formerly known as number 2 wide receiver before you killed it. You've got Dyami Brown and Olamide Zaccheaus. Those are the 2 guys that lined up outside. I could see that continuing into the season. I don't know that was some kind of preseason bluff or experiment. And then in the slot, you've got Jahan Dotson and Luke McCaffrey, right? And so everybody's got their role. The thing I'm trying to figure out, I continue to think that when it's showtime, they're going to have a lot of 2 tight end sets, which kind of scrambles everything up to start with anyway, because I think the tight ends, there's a lot of guys making very legitimate cases to get some snaps, get some playing time out there. But I'm ready to simplify this to Dyami Brown and Olamide Zaccheaus are competing for snaps, and Jahan Dotson and Luke McCaffrey are competing for snaps. And that's an oversimplification, but it felt like that was where we were trending on Saturday.
No, I think that's an astute observation because, and I do think that those snaps are ultimately one guy's going to line up in the slot. But I think some weeks it's just going to be Luke based more on they want a big power slot. And then some weeks it's like, no, we think Jahan's the better matchup. I'm still curious what the distribution is going to be on the outside because Zaccheaus and Brown bring some different stuff to that spot, different size. And, obviously there could be a wide receiver 6 that's in play here. And if it's Bryant or Tremaine, who seems to be falling out of favor for reasons I don't fully understand, but if it's one of those bigger body types, like you would think they would have a role. But I also agree that the way Sinnott has played, the way Ertz has been, you're going to see a lot of different formation stuff. You're going to see a lot of different packages, and I think that's going to be fun to watch Cliff manage that. The thing is, though, you got to get it right week in, week out. It's a lot of moving parts as opposed to just kind of being the classic, here's who we are, line up and beat us type of team.
A lot of moving parts. I haven't talked about Jayden Daniels in 4 minutes, so this is a great excuse to say Jayden Daniels' name again. One of the things that's impressed me this preseason, he processes at a very high level, right? They went through a lot of different looks, a lot of different the no-huddle stuff that come into the line in each of the 2 weeks, and he handled it all very well. And one of the things you've heard from the building, right, is you can throw pretty much anything at this kid, and, with practice, with preparation, he's going to be ready for it. I think that bodes really well for the situation you just described, that you've got a quarterback that is not going to be bothered by being in a roster that ends up looking like that.
Michael Phillips, MP on the mic, down in Richmond with us here on The Hoffman Show. Of course, long time beat reporter, columnist, covered the team from all different angles. And by all different angles, I just mean he wrote and then he did the radio. Because that's, Michael, television doesn't exist. That's all
threat,
angles.
Baby.
Yeah, radio and writing. That's all you need to do in life. Defensively, it's hard to take, to me, a whole lot out of the early snaps because you don't have almost anybody in the front seven besides Dorrance Armstrong, who, by the way, I think he's going to be really good. He full on just got lost, more lost than, I don't know, whoever the most lost person you can think of is, on that tight end reverse. Just full didn't see the ball get pitched coming around. So that was a fun play. But besides him and Frankie Louvu, you didn't have any of the front seven out there. But the secondary was out there. A couple of plays made. Quan Martin has a nice play deep. Obviously, the touchdown given up by St. Juice. What do you take out of the guys that we anticipate seeing a lot of during the regular season before we get to the guys that we're wondering if they will, if we will, a la Jamin Davis?
Yeah, I think we talk about this defense as being better than last year, and the coaching's better. And, if they're 60 to 70% better, that's awesome. I think there's still a real liability on explosive plays. And if you were tired of hearing that phrase last year, I get the sense we may be hearing that phrase again this year. I get the sense they're not shored up enough that they can play some kind, the way teams play against Mahomes, right, where they just drop 2 safeties back, say you're going to win this 8 yards at a time, and maybe we'll get lucky and you get a holding penalty, and that's our strategy for beating you, right? I think teams are going to go for the jugular against these guys, and I don't know that I've seen enough yet to say that they're ready for that or that they're good enough or talented enough to prevent that. That is probably what's scaring me the most right now. I'm not actually losing sleep, but if I were, it would probably be over the threat of big explosive plays undoing what has otherwise been a step forward for this group.
Who do you think winds up being the starting corners on this team? Are you still like Forbes, St. Juice running it back? Do you think Davis? Do you think that they do something wacky and Sainer still is outside? Like, where are you at with one preseason game to go with that crew?
Yeah, I think Sanders still is your third, right? So I think it's St. Juice, and I'm curious, right? I think they want it to be Forbes because Davis is known, right? He's a veteran guy. We all fall in love with veteran guys this time of year. He is what he is. We got enough NFL tape on him to know what he is. Forbes, the ceiling is higher. The floor is a lot lower, Craig. And so I think that's what they're going to have to balance is if this is a rebuilding trust effort, you can't expose him to getting burned by Daniel Jones and, by Joe Burrow and in these first weeks, even Baker Mayfield, who's got a ton of receiving weapons. You run the risk of undoing all the work you've spent all offseason doing. And that doesn't speak great of where the work got you, but man, I think you look at, I think St. Juice will be fine. I really do. And I know he didn't look great on that touchdown, but I feel comfortable with him being an NFL caliber starting corner. He's probably not a CB1. That's where you have to play him here. That's what he is on this team. I don't love that he's there, but I think he's an NFL caliber starting corner. I think Davis is a replacement level guy, and you've got to figure out, is Forbes better or worse than that?
Yeah, I actually think Forbes has shown relatively well, especially the last couple of weeks.
Yeah,
he also finally looks
90%
bigger.
90% of the time. 90% of the time. He works every time, Craig. It's the 10%.
It's less than 10%, and it's specific stuff. I have faith. Mike. I really do. And I will say, he finally does actually look bigger. Like, even on television, you're like,
Yeah.
oh, okay. I see those 17 pounds you put on. What did you make, speaking of him on television, what did you make of his comments? We haven't talked about this yet, but the under the microscope thing. I'm going to ask you open-ended, and then I will give my take on it since I haven't talked about it yet.
Well, he's indisputably right. He is, and that is true. And we talk about him more because he's a first-round pick than we do if he wasn't. And if St. Juice were a first-round pick, we'd probably be picking him apart like that too. And we'd probably have several segments today devoted to the touchdown he gave up. But he's not. And the fundamental point is correct. Life is unfair in the NFL. If you're a first-round draft pick, you face immensely more scrutiny. That said, I'm not breaking out the tiny violin for him, right? He was a ball hawking SEC, 6'6" guy, and it just disappeared when he got to the NFL. And I think the last coaching staff did him a lot of disservice, but I think it's a very fair and interesting storyline. What is this kid? Can he reclaim it? And because of that, there's going to be a lot of eyes on him. And I think that's why it's such an interesting decision for this staff, who has unquestionably gotten more out of him. You mentioned the body type, which is better. You mentioned the play, which is better. Is it worth risking all that for the potential that he has one of those games that he had with A.J. Brown and everything goes back to zero and everybody's, tough. I guess that just doesn't work. I think that's the microscope, right? And that's the coaching staff's decision. Is it worth it or not worth it to potentially expose him to that when the upside is, I do think he's better than Davis?
Yeah, I actually think the coaching staff has done a tremendous job in general, like being like, don't worry about outside. You worry about what we think, and what we think is X, and players know where they stand. I also don't think that Forbes was like, that quote came out and I think looks worse in print than it is if you watch that interview, where he's like, yeah, you feel like you're under the microscope, but like that's the NFL, that's football. Like I don't think it was said as a complaint. I think it was merely a statement of fact. And as you said, like it's a statement of fact that is correct. But I also think that the ability to brush that off and just be like, okay, this is what it is for everybody. I'm not special. I don't think he was saying that he is special in any way or is being treated even unfairly. It's just the reality that you have to live with. And I think he is. I've always actually been impressed with him in interviews, Michael, but I do feel like this staff has got him more prepared to deal with the reality of being under that microscope, a.k.a. being a better player. And as long as he's feeling that progress and they're seeing that progress, then it's worth the risk. And if he can't handle a bad game as a corner, you're not going to survive in this league anyway, because sometimes you go up against, A.J. Brown, and them's the breaks in the league.
You think this coaching staff is better than the previous defensive coaching staff?
I know. I should stop being a hot take artist. I should just what a shameful person I am. Speaking of first-round picks of the last staff, Michael, real quick before we get out of here, I've been impressed with Jamin Davis the last couple weeks as well. What did you see from Jamin besides the obvious of, hey, he forced a fumble, and that's good?
My hot take on my show is I think he's actually becoming like maybe a little bit of a fan favorite. Like I think people like the Jamin Davis redemption story arc. Kids working hard. They're trying to find a space for him. He's aggressive. You still don't know what to do with him. You still don't know what situations to put him in, because I think he is a liability in certain situations, and your smarter quarterbacks are going to take advantage of that. But I get the sense people are rooting for him, Craig, and I like that. That warms my heart a little bit, that it's not just Jamin Davis bust, but now new team, new coach, new slate, fresh slate, and yeah, I think people are rooting for him a little bit.
No, I agree. And by the way, you can count me in on that. To the extent that we root in when we're journalists, I'm rooting for Jamin Davis, because I root for people that play really hard and hustle and try and are willing to take risks and bet on themselves, and that's what he's doing. I guess he could have been obstinate and been like, I'm not playing defensive end. You put me at linebacker, and if I don't make the team, you cut me. But he didn't. He's like, okay, you want me to do this? And he's doing it. And he might actually turn out to be good at it. That would be cool.
None of any of this is Jamin Davis's fault. That helps too, right? Like he didn't draft him to be a middle linebacker when, there were, all those stories were like, hey, he's played like 7 college games. What is he? So I think everybody's willing to give him a chance, and I agree. I hope he turns into something good. I just don't know what that is yet.
Yep. No, agreed. Anything in particular that you want to highlight for folks either on your show today or to watch for this week if they want to check out the old Odyssey app between 10 a.m. and noon?
We want to bring everybody who, if you're in the Richmond area this weekend, we're doing a football festival. River City Roll is the bowling alley in the middle of town, but it's also like a bar and, big event space. We're doing a big football festival, 3 to 7, Saturday night, River City Roll in Richmond. If you're near the Richmond area, it's going to be a ton of fun, so come hang out with us.
I mean, I'm always looking for an excuse to come to Richmond, Michael. Why wasn't I personally invited?
You are personally invited
to
come hang out with me. Your first beverage is on me, as long as it's not one of those highfalutin IPAs that cost a lot of money.
No, I'm not
a simple man.
I'm not an IPA kind of guy. I will also say that the chances that I can convince my wife to make a trip this weekend, as we're still we just got back from France. We don't want to leave the house yet. Probably not great. But I still would have liked a personal invitation, and now I got one. So whether I turn it down or not, TBD. But I'll let you know.
I will be, and then I will be up 95 the next day. I will be filling in for our guy Steve Wino, writing the Associated Press report from the preseason game, which I should have read the fine print, and this is on me. Does apparently mean I have to stay until the finish.
Oh yeah, no, that's a choice you've made, Michael. But it means you'll have seen the whole thing, and when we play the Not My Beat Imager next Monday, and it's from someone who's there, you'll have been there.
Me and 12 of my closest friends,
and that's about it. Hey, it's Jayden Daniels versus Drake May. What dreams are made of, except for the part where Jayden's probably not going to play. Michael Phillips, everybody. 910 The Fan in Richmond, which you can find on the free Odyssey app and listen to Michael's show from 10 a.m. to noon, or just wait for him to show up weekly at 5 p.m. on Mondays right here. Michael, thank you, sir.
It is my pleasure.
What's up, kiddos? It's your boy Clinton Yates from ESPN. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. Tell your mama I said what's up.